Hi, welcome to GrowStrong with Tower Gardening. I'm Janine Fugere.
I'm Paul Teixera.
How you guys doing today? So, we have a really tragically empty outdoor tower garden. We didn't tower garden outdoors last summer because there was construction going on here. And this year we're getting kind of a late start. So we're kind of excited to tell you what we're going to do so that we can still have a successful outdoor tower garden even though we started way too late. Like it's June, what is it, 20th?
June 19th.
June 19th, yeah. So that's a pretty late start for gardening.
Better late than never, though, right?
But we've got this, and we have quite a lot of reasons why we'll be successful. And we're going to start with having Paul tell you a little bit. Tell them, Paul, what's going on with these plants over here. What do we have, and why are they not ready to go in the tower yet?
Yeah, so we went and we got some established vegetable plants. We've got some tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers, some edible flowers. And they're, as I said, they're established. They're in dirt. And if maybe you can see the seeds pointing to them here. Yeah, so they're in dirt.
We don't want that in there.
We don't want that in the tower. That won't work. That'll clog the pump, and dirt just doesn't work for the tower. So we're going to spend some time today moving it from the dirt to the rockwool cubes and then plant them into the tower.
So we have a process. We used this 2 years ago. Like I said, we didn't garden last summer, but the summer before we ended up with a lot of empty ports when early cold crops finished. And so we did go out and buy some established plants, and we were successful 2 years ago. We're hoping we'll be successful again. Some of these are a little bit bigger, so this is kind of an experiment for us. But the goal is we're going to take each plant and we're going to take it out of its pot and dunk it repeatedly in a pot, in a bucket of water to release the roots off. To release the dirt off the roots. We have some rockwool cubes here that have been soaked in pH balanced water, so they're ready to go. What we'll do is, after each plant has been dunked enough that we've gotten the vast majority of all the soil off the roots as gently as we can, we'll take a knife and we'll cut a rockwool cube in half and we'll rubber band it around the root structure. So we'll show you that as we go. Right now, I'm going to pause the camera. We're going to set up our little dunking station right here so you'll be able to see what we're doing. And I'm going to zoom the camera in a little bit so you can actually see the process of how we remove the dirt. Does that sound good to you there, Paul?
That sounds great. And just to mention, we have a nice day to do this. It's about 55 degrees. It's been in the 90s here in Colorado, but it's a nice day to do the transplanting in this cool weather.
Yeah, really glad Paul mentioned that. We had a run of some like high 80s and even into the 90s. So we've been keeping the plants back there in the shade. And we waited for a cool, cloudy day. And so we got a little bit of a late start this morning, so we may be moving a little quickly. But the key is we didn't want them to go into shock. They were already going to be freaked out a little bit that we're about to dump the soil off their roots. And then once we put them in the tower, we don't want them to go into shock. So we're going to take it easy on them. This nice, cool weather is due to last at least a couple of days. So we think this is a really good time to start them with the least likelihood of them going into shock. If we lose any, you know how it is. You pull it out, you put something else in. That's the thing about tower gardening. It's really not that hard, okay? Yeah. So give us a moment to change up our station here, and I really am excited to start with this big tomato because it actually has a tomato on it already. And I'm praying that I don't lose that tomato in the transplant process, but we'll see what happens.
Just to mention what we did up to this point before we go ahead and transplant the plants into the tower. We do have the tower. It's filled with the 20 gallons of filtered water. We use the hose end filter to do the filtering. And it's been, we've added nutrients, and the water has been pH balanced to a 5.8 pH level.
We find that's about optimum for the average plants that you run in tower gardens.
Right. So we have a digital pH meter that we've been using. We also double check with the pH solution, a color chart.
I like the color chart because I'm not really a numbers girl.
Being colorblind, I can't use it. I have to rely on the digital meter. But anyway, that's just to let you know what we did prior to the to the transplant here. We have everything set up internally inside the
And I'm happy Paul mentioned that. So this is just like a grand experiment you get to be part of with us, okay?
Yeah.
So let's get going. We'll move these things aside. We'll start with this large tomato and see how it goes.
All right.
Usually once you get going, it starts to get a lot easier. It's the first one you get a little nervous about, so I'm just going to set these things aside. And how about if you let me sit on that bottom step there?
Sure.
And we'll bring out the tomato. We also have a whole bunch of rubber bands because these are what we use to tie the rockwool, hold the rockwool cubes that we've cut in half around the roots. It'll all make a lot more sense as we start doing it. So here comes my Roma Plum tomato. And I love Roma tomatoes. Here I've got my favorite tomatoes on earth, Roma Plums. This is a bush variety of tomato. That means it's a determinate. What that means is it doesn't vine as much. You still need a fair amount of space for tomatoes though. So we are going to put it on the bottom, and we are using a growing cage because it supports the branches with the fruit so that they don't get too heavy and break off. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little bit of pre-pruning, and I want to start with any dead or damaged growth on the plant. Those are just ways for disease to get in. Oh my gosh, we have two tomatoes on this, Paul. We have 2 plums. So I'm going to tell you honestly, I have no idea what's going to happen because I've never transplanted a plant that already had fruit on it before. This is our grand new experiment, but I'm willing to give it a go. I am a woman of much faith. You'll notice there are roots around the outside of this, so it sounds like it's going to be pretty dicey to get it out. But I'm just going to dunk it in this bucket, and I'm going to start very gently massaging it. Very gently, very gently, very gently. I will probably need more than 1 bucket full, because there's a lot of dirt on this guy. But as I'm working it, you'll notice I'm getting down to a much smaller. The vast majority of what's in here is dirt. A very small amount of it is roots. So I'm not pulling on the roots, and I'm really not pulling on the dirt either. I'm gently massaging it. I think I'm to the point, if I wouldn't be too much trouble to ask my camera guy, will you switch me which which bucket of water? I'm going to switch over to the second bucket. So, as you can see, way still too much dirt on this in order to... Oh, I'm sorry. I just soaked my partner's sneaker with dirty water. Sorry. I think he likes me enough that he'll still hang out with me.
They're dirty sneakers anyway.
Dirty sneakers with dirt on them now.
Yeah.
So now I'm just kind of plunging it up and down, and notice each time a little more is coming. It helps also if you plunge it a little to the side. Notice I've gotten a lot of the dirt off. Okay, I've gotten a lot. I mean, I'm really close. I may end up, as a matter of fact, I am going to end up very gently trimming the very bottoms of these roots off. And here's the reason I'm doing that. I'm just going to cut it with a knife. You can use pruning shears or whatever you've got. This has a pretty big ball of dirt stuck in it that I don't think there would be much way I could get out otherwise. The other thing that's in here is they put this little perlite stuff. It's like a white styrofoam in with potting soil mixture. And we don't really want that in the pump either, so we're going to give this one last rinse. At this point, I'm just trying to rinse some of the very last of this kind of white perlite styrofoamy stuff off. I have more of it on me than I do on the plant. I'm pretty comfortable with this. This plant, yes, it is true that it does have a little tiny bit of dirt left on it, and maybe some purists would say, oh my God, you're going to ruin your pump. The pump has a filter, and I would just, I'll show you when I get ready to put this in. There is a way that you can manage your filter in such a way, your pump, that you can quick reach it through your door and quick pull it out and clean the filter without even taking the pump out. And this guy is large. I may do something I've never done before, which is typically I'll just take the rockwool cube and I will slice it right down the middle of where the hole is, so that now I have 2 halves of pre-soaked rockwool, like this. I'm going to want those to be positioned right where the stem of the tomato was coming out of the soil. So that's about here. And those are what I'm going to use to hold the plant in the tower garden. I can tell you I'm going to need more than one because this plant is a little bigger than we've transplanted before. So I'm going to pull another one off. My goal is to keep it surrounded with rockwool. Even though it has a lot of roots, the rockwool will help keep the roots moist and it'll help keep water from evaporating out of the top of the port. So I'm actually taking 2 rockwool cubes. This is going to be an interesting part because I got to get around these long roots. So I'm going to try really... I might need a second pair of hands, Paul.
Okay. You might want to
just leave the camera and I'm going to have you hold this while I put the rubber band on.
Okay.
So my camera guy's going to come over and he's just going to hold this right like this. You're just going to hold those 4 together. Because here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to stretch this rubber band out, up, and around. And then, if you can still continue holding, I'm going to go again. And I'm just going to gently pull the roots through. Okay, I think you can let go.
Let me tell them.
Okay, you go ahead back to the camera. And it looks wonky. It really does. It doesn't look especially delicate or pretty. But I tell you, this is going to do the job. What we have here is a pretty happy seedling. It's got a pretty solid root structure. Yes, there is still a little bit of dirt in there, okay? In an ideal world, I would be able to get all of that out, and I may even get one last bucket of clean water to plunge that. If these roots were smaller, I would just wrap them around and put it in a net pot. This guy's going to be too big. The problem is, I couldn't figure out how to fit the net pot. Well, I just got a brainstorm. I cut the bottom off the net pot. So, what you have here is the plant is in the 2 separate rockwool cubes that I just kind of sandwiched around it so it's got some spongy material to hold moisture. The bottom of the rock pot has been cut off. I fed the roots straight through the bottom, and now I'm going to very gently guide those roots into the tower. And you might want to zoom in, Paul, if you can see there. And then I'm just going to snap that baby in, and I'm going to make sure it's in there nice and snug. The last thing I'm going to do is just make sure that I've got some decent support for the plant. Because it is already pretty established, I'm going to hang one of the branches over the growing cage. At this point, what I'm going to do is pray. Because, love you little plant, we put you through a lot this morning. But we want you to be really strong and grow, and we hope that this is going to be a nice, healthy tower for you. Yes, I do talk to my plants. It's scientific proven. So, love on them. Once you get them in there, love on them. I'm not going to touch this guy or adjust it anymore because he's been through enough. So we'll take a pause, we'll change out some water, we'll get ready for the next plant, okay? That one's a plum tomato, and if we're really lucky, there's 1, 2, 3, oh my goodness, 4 or 5 plums already on there. So hopefully our process of this late transplant won't cause us to lose that fruit. This is a hybrid, celebrity hybrid. It's also a determinate, so it's another bush variety of tomato. You can grow indeterminates if you want, but your entire area around your garden is going to be filled with vines, or you're going to need to put a trellis behind. So we like determinate bush varieties. They still get pretty big. I see one kind of yellowish leaf on the bottom. That's the first thing I do is I get rid of anything that's not healthy. And I'm going to set this name tag aside. I also see a couple of suckers coming out right at the base of the stem, and I'm not going to want those. So I'm going to get rid of those. Anybody who's grown tomatoes knows you have to kind of judiciously decide which leaves to get rid of, because if too much energy goes into leaf production, you don't get much fruit production. So I just started right off the bat saying I don't need those extra ones around the base. I'm going to gently loosen it from its pot. You can see that there are roots around it, but they're not very tightly formed, and I think this one's going to be fairly easy. So I'm just kind of dunking and shaking, dunking and shaking. A little bit of very gentle massaging. It's easier if you do that while you're under the water. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going like this under the water. So if you can see, here's where the soil line was. So I'm going to take my rockwool cube that's been cut in half, and I'm going to sandwich that around where the soil line was. It's not exactly beautiful, but it works, okay? Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to decide which way I'm going to want this facing in the tower, and I'm thinking like this. So I'm going to get the net pot with the bottom. I'm going to find the back of the net pot, and I'm going to, this is going to take a little work. I'm going to feed these little babies down through the bottom of the net pot. They might need a little coaxing. If they're wet, they'll probably go faster. Oh yes, that's the trick. Dip them, and then put them into the net pot. So I'm going to want it to face about like this. This way, I don't have to, I could just wrap the roots around the rock wool, but these are pretty long, and so I've decided to let them go ahead down into the tower. Now that it's placed in the net pot, I'm just going to go pop that into the base of the tower, and then squeezing the net pot in. Voila, 2 tomato plants ready to go. Well, as you know, we had planted 2 tomatoes, but oh my gosh, look at this tower.
Look at this now.
It's like magic. Well, we wish we could tell you that it was just magic and all the rest of those seedlings just miraculously cleaned themselves of soil and prepared themselves in rockwool. And while I let my hair down and hung out here with Paul, they all just magically ended up in the tower. But it wasn't quite like that, was it, Paul?
Not at all. To tell you the truth here, behind the scenes, we had at least a couple hours of work. Yeah, there was, for each of these plants, we had to, get the dirt off, and we had to put them in the net pots and, transplant them, and that's quite a bit of work.
Although I say, if it's something you love doing, it's not work. So
yeah.
Do something you love, and it'll never feel like work. That's how it goes.
That's true. But just to let you know, it wasn't just a magical appearance of these things. There is a little bit to do, in between. So
we are going to explain to you how we got from the 2 tomatoes to here. We'll talk about that in just a minute, okay? So here we are on the bottom of the tower. These are the 2 tomatoes that were in yesterday. I'm so excited to report the plums have already grown substantially since yesterday, like they've doubled in size. And I think we figured out we have 4 of them on there. So that's exciting. The next video, stay tuned, we're going to break them down in little parts. The next one coming up will be on the cucumbers, which are our most vulnerable ones. They're really pretty tender. They've been a little shocky. They're doing much better in the evening. And the one on the shady side and back, turn this around just so you can see the difference. The one that's on the shady side in the back is a little bit less shocky and actually has new leaves. So we're real optimistic on the cukes. I am. Paul doesn't care because he's not a cucumber guy, but this is my first time having cukes in a really long time. And I might even leave the tower backwards for now to give this one that's in a little bit of a, more of a state of a shock. Those were the most tender ones in our transplants, so we'll have a video on those, and we're going to follow those. They're still an experiment in progress whether or not I'll be successful on those, but they're a bush determinate variety of burpless cucumbers. Then I think the next video we'll show, I'll bring you back to the front side of our tower. So that's Pepperland. Paul, you want to tell them what kind of peppers we have?
Oh yes, we have some Mexibel, and we have jalapenos as well.
Yep.
And bell peppers too.
And poblano.
And poblanos as well, yes.
Did we mention that we really love peppers here? So we'll do another video on the pepper production, how we got them ready, cleaned the seeds, how we put them in, and also the staking system that we used in the tower garden, a little bamboo skewer system. So that'll be one of our videos. And then another video will be on some of the perennial herbs we have in the tower. Actually, I'm pretty sure basil's an annual, but we sort of treat it like a perennial because we just keep running it. We've got a basil, a rosemary, and some flat leaf parsley. So we'll do one on the herbs, and probably together with that we'll show you the edible flowers, which are the dwarf marigolds. We already gave one of them up and put it in the front garden down here in our perennial herb garden because we changed our mind and added an extra jalapeno pepper that we weren't going to grow, and we were like, yeah, that we can never have too many peppers. So.
Are they dwarf or regular marigolds?
These are not dwarf French marigolds. I don't believe. I would have to double check the tag that came with them. But the dwarf French are usually a smaller, and they're a slightly more yellow. This is like the yellowish orange, as opposed to like a lemon drop yellow. There's all different varieties of dwarf marigolds. The bottom line is they're all edible, and so are the leaves. So chances are a lot of these will end up in our garden as we find other succession plantings to put in here. Because this is a lot of marigolds for 2 people to eat. We probably wouldn't eat, they'll be big with lots of flowers. So some of them will end up in here eventually as we put other plants in. So that's what's going on. So be sure to check back with us here at GrowStrong LLC, because we're going to be showing, as we mentioned, several different videos of the different things we planted in here. They were all soil plants that we safely converted for use in a tower garden. So we'll talk to you soon. Take care from Janine and
Paul from GrowStrong LLC.
happy gardening.
Take care.